My 13-year-old daughter was sitting quietly on our front porch in her wheelchair. Her leg was in a big cast from a recent accident, and she was just resting after a hard day. Then Karen, the HOA lady who always complains, marched up our driveway. She was screaming about leaving toys on the lawn and making the street look bad. My daughter tried to explain in a soft voice that she wasn't doing anything wrong. Karen got even madder. She stepped right up, grabbed my daughter by the shirt, and punched her hard in the face. Blood poured from her nose and lip. My daughter cried out in shock and pain, holding her face. She looked up at me with tears and whispered, "Dad, it hurts so much." Karen stood there smirking like she won. She had no idea the man running out of the house with fire in his eyes was the police chief and her father. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me where you are watching from, and please hit subscribe for more stories where the good guys always win. My 13-year-old daughter was sitting quietly on our front porch in her wheelchair. She wasn't playing. She wasn't moving around. She wasn't bothering anyone. Her left leg rested stiff and heavy in a thick white cast that stretched from her thigh to her ankle, the result of a car accident just weeks earlier. The doctors had said she was healing well, but the pain still came in waves, especially by evening. We had placed a pillow under her leg, adjusted the wheelchair just right, and brought her outside so she could get some fresh air after being stuck indoors all day. She liked sitting on the porch. She said it made her feel normal again. The afternoon sun was warm but gentle, filtering through the trees that lined our quiet suburban street. The neighborhood was calm in that familiar way. Lawn sprinklers ticking softly, a dog barking far away, the low hum of a passing car. Everything felt peaceful. Safe. My daughter held a small book in her lap, not really reading, just flipping pages slowly. Every so often she would look up and smile when she heard a bird or felt the breeze brush against her face. I was inside the house, just a few steps away, watching her through the open front door. That's when I saw Karen. She appeared at the edge of our driveway like a storm cloud. Karen was the HOA lady, the one everyone knew, the one who complained about everything. Grass too long, trash cans out 5 minutes late, kids drawing with chalk on the sidewalk. She walked the neighborhood like she owned it, clipboard in hand, chin raised, eyes always searching for something to be angry about. Today, she didn't have a clipboard. She had something worse. She marched up our driveway fast, her shoes slapping hard against the concrete, her face already twisted with rage. Her eyes locked onto my daughter like she had found her next target. I felt my stomach tighten. Even from inside, I could hear her yelling, "Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable." My daughter looked up, startled. Karen stopped just a few feet from the porch and started screaming about toys on the lawn and making the street look bad. Her voice was sharp, loud, cutting through the quiet afternoon like broken glass. My daughter looked down at herself, confused. There were no toys, no mess, no rule being broken. She swallowed and spoke softly, her voice shaking but polite the way we had taught her. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said. "I'm just sitting here. I didn't do anything. That should have ended it. It didn't." Karen's face twisted even more. "Don't talk back to me," she snapped. "I know the rules better than you do." My daughter's eyes widened. She tried again, even quieter this time. "My leg is broken. I can't go anywhere." Karen stepped closer. Too close. I took a step toward the door. Then everything happened at once. Karen lunged forward and grabbed my daughter by the front of her shirt, yanking her forward in the wheelchair. The sudden movement made the chair jerk, the casted leg shifting painfully. Before my brain could even process what I was seeing, Karen pulled back her arm and punched her, hard. Her fist connected with my daughter's face with a sickening sound. Blood exploded from her nose and split lip, splattering onto her shirt, the porch floor, the arm of the wheelchair. My daughter screamed, not just in pain but in pure shock, the kind of scream that comes from a child who doesn't understand why an adult would hurt her. She dropped the book. It fell open on the porch, pages fluttering uselessly. My daughter clutched her face with shaking hands, sobbing, blood slipping through her fingers. Her body trembled, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. "Dad!" she cried. That scream ripped through me. She looked up toward the house, eyes filled with tears and fear, her voice breaking into a whisper that I will never forget. "Dad, it hurts so much." I was already moving. The front door flew open as I charged out, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might tear through my chest. Every step felt heavy and light at the same time, rage and fear colliding inside me. Karen stepped back, finally letting go, and then she smiled. Not nervous, not shocked, smirking, like she had just won something, like she had taught a lesson. She looked down at my daughter, bleeding and crying in a wheelchair, and let out a small, satisfied breath. "That's what happens," she said coldly, "when you don't follow the rules." My vision tunneled. I dropped to my knees beside my daughter, gently pulling her hands away from her face so I could see the damage. Blood streamed down her chin. Her lip was split, her nose already swelling. She flinched at my touch but didn't pull away. "I'm here," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I've got you. You're okay." She grabbed my arm with surprising strength, like she was afraid I might disappear. Behind us, Karen crossed her arms. "She assaulted me," Karen said loudly, already trying to rewrite reality. I was just defending myself. I stood up slowly. Karen finally looked at my face. Really looked. The smirk faded, the confidence cracked, because she finally realized something. The man standing in front of her, shaking with controlled fury, blood on his hands from his daughter's face, was not just a neighbor. He was the police chief, and her mistake had just become irreversible. For a split second after I stood up, the entire world seemed to stop moving. The birds went quiet. The breeze disappeared. Even the distant sounds of traffic faded into nothing. All I could hear was my daughter's uneven breathing behind me and the pounding of my own heart. Karen took one step back, then another. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable, but I saw it. The moment when her confidence cracked, the moment when her brain started racing, trying to figure out who I was and whether she had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. She straightened her shoulders, forcing her chin up like she always did. "You need to control your child," she said sharply, pointing past me toward my daughter. "She assaulted me. I was defending myself." I stared at her. Really stared. Her knuckles were still clenched, her breathing was heavy, and there was a faint smear of my daughter's blood on her hand. Behind me, my daughter whimpered. I turned slightly, just enough to see her from the corner of my eye. She was hunched forward in her wheelchair, shoulders shaking, blood dripping onto the porch boards. One hand clutched the armrest so tightly her knuckles were white. The other hovered near her face, afraid to touch it. "Daddy?" she whispered again. That word shattered whatever restraint I had left. I knelt down beside her once more, blocking Karen completely from her view. I took off my jacket and pressed it gently against her nose and mouth, trying to slow the bleeding. "Hey," I said softly, "look at me." Her eyes met mine, glassy with tears. "You didn't do anything wrong," I said. "Do you hear me?" "Nothing." She nodded weakly. Behind us, Karen scoffed. "Oh, please," she said. "This is all drama. Kids exaggerate." That's when I felt something change inside me. Not rage, focus, the kind of calm that comes right before action. I stood up again, slowly, deliberately, and turned to face Karen. "Step back," I said. She laughed, short and sharp. "You don't get to give me orders. I represent the HOA. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Karen's eyes flicked to it. "Are you recording me?" she demanded. "Dead? No," I replied calmly. "I'm calling this in." I pressed one button. Karen's posture stiffened. "You don't need to escalate this," she said quickly. "We can handle this like adults." I put the phone to my ear and spoke clearly. "This is Chief Daniels. I need immediate units at my address. Assault on a minor. Suspect still on scene." Karen froze. Her mouth opened, then closed again. "Chief," the word hung in the air like a gunshot. You can't just..." She started. I lowered the phone and looked directly at her. "You punched a 13-year-old girl in a wheelchair," I said evenly. "You don't get to talk now." Her face went pale. No, you're exaggerating," she said, backing up another step. She provoked me. She was disrespectful. Neighbors started to appear. A curtain moved across the street. A door opened 2 houses down. Someone stepped onto their porch holding a phone. Karen noticed them too. Her voice grew louder, shriller. "She attacked me," Karen shouted, waving her arms. "I was just enforcing the rules." My daughter flinched at the sound. I turned back to her and knelt again, shielding her with my body. I checked her eyes, her pupils, her breathing, doing everything training had drilled into me over decades. She reached for my hand again. "Am I in trouble?" she asked in a trembling whisper. The question hit me harder than the punch. "No," I said immediately. "You are not in trouble. Not now. Not ever." She nodded, trying to be brave, but tears kept falling. The sound of sirens began faintly in the distance. Karen heard them too. Her panic kicked in. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "You're abusing your authority. I'll report you." I stood up one last time and faced her fully. "This isn't about authority," I said. "This is about what you did." The sirens grew louder. Karen's eyes darted down the street, then back to me, then to the neighbors watching. Her voice dropped, suddenly sweet. "Look, maybe we can forget this happened," she said. "Kids get hurt all the time." I took one step toward her. She took 3 steps back. The first patrol car turned onto the street, lights flashing, then another, then another. They stopped right in front of my house. Doors flew open, officers rushed forward, and the moment they saw my daughter, everything changed. One officer immediately dropped to a knee beside her. "Oh my God," he said softly. Another officer turned to Karen. "Ma'am, step away from the child," he ordered. Karen raised her hands defensively. "She attacked me. 3 neighbors spoke at once." "No, she didn't. We saw it. That woman punched the girl." Karen's voice cracked. "They're lying." The officer turned back to me. "Chief," I nodded once. "Take her into custody." Karen screamed. "This is harassment. This is a setup." Handcuffs clicked shut around her wrists. She fought. She twisted. She cursed. My daughter watched silently from her wheelchair, her small body still shaking. As Karen was led down the driveway, she turned back and locked eyes with my daughter. And for the first time, she looked afraid. I knelt beside my daughter again and pulled her close. "It's over," I whispered, "I promise." The ambulance siren joined the others. Justice had arrived. And this was only the beginning. Karen stopped fighting the moment the second set of cuffs tightened. It wasn't because she suddenly understood what she had done. It was because reality finally caught up with her. Her breathing turned shallow, her chest rising and falling too fast, her eyes darting wildly between the officers, the neighbors, the flashing lights, and me. The confidence she had carried for years, the arrogance that let her scream at children and threaten families, crumbled piece by piece. "This is wrong," she muttered. "This is all wrong." One officer held her arms firmly while another read her rights. Karen barely listened. Her lips moved, silently repeating fragments of excuses she hadn't yet said out loud. "This is a misunderstanding. She provoked me. I didn't mean—" Her eyes locked onto me again. "You can stop this," she said suddenly, her voice cracking. "You don't have to do this." I didn't answer. I was kneeling beside my daughter again, helping the medic clean the blood from her face. She flinched when the cloth touched her lip, and I felt my jaw tighten. "Easy," the medic said gently. "You're doing great." Karen watched from the driveway. For the first time, she saw my daughter not as a problem, not as a violation, but as a small, injured child. Pale, shaking, terrified, and it scared her. One of the officers stepped aside and spoke quietly into his radio. "Confirmed assault on a minor. Multiple witnesses. Victim is 13. Suspect is HOA representative." Karen's knees buckled slightly. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no." A neighbor stepped forward. Mrs. Alvarez from 2 houses down. She had lived on the street for over 20 years and had seen Karen bully half the neighborhood. "I saw everything," she said firmly. "That girl didn't do a thing. She was just sitting there." Another neighbor joined in. She came charging up the driveway yelling, and then she punched her. Karen shook her head violently. "They're lying," she snapped, desperation bleeding into her voice. "They hate me." No one responded, because everyone knew the truth. The officers guided Karen toward the patrol car. As they walked her past my porch, she turned her head sharply toward my daughter. "You ruined my life," she hissed. My daughter stiffened. I stood up immediately, placing myself between them. "Not another word," I said coldly. Karen flinched like I had struck her. The car door opened. As the officer gently ushed her toward the seat, Karen finally broke. I was just doing my job, she screamed. I keep this neighborhood safe. Safe. The word echoed in my mind as I watched my daughter tremble under a blanket, her leg in a cast, her face swollen and bruised. The door slammed shut. Silence followed, the kind of silence that feels heavy, final. The ambulance doors opened and the paramedics prepared to move my daughter. She grabbed my sleeve. Daddy, am I going to be okay? I swallowed hard. Yes, I said. You're going to be okay. As they lifted her carefully onto the stretcher, she reached for my hand again. I held it the entire time, walking beside her as they loaded her into the ambulance. Karen watched from inside the patrol car. Her eyes were red now, her face pale, her mouth trembling. She realized something then. This wasn't a warning. This wasn't a complaint. This wasn't an HOA issue. This was criminal. The patrol car pulled away first. Neighbors stood quietly, some shaking their heads, others wiping tears from their eyes. The ambulance followed. At the hospital, the doctors worked quickly. X-rays, scans, stitches. They confirmed what we feared. A fractured nose, a deep split lip, severe bruising. But no brain injury. When they told me that, my legs almost gave out. Later, as my daughter slept under hospital lights, I stepped out into the hallway. An officer waited for me. She's being booked, he said. Felony assault on a minor. Hate-related enhancement is being reviewed. I nodded slowly. And the HOA? I asked. They've already called, he said. They're distancing themselves. Of course they were. Karen had built her identity around power she never actually had. And now it was gone. The next morning, the story spread. Photos of police cars on our street. Neighbors' videos. Witness statements. By noon, Karen's name was everywhere. By evening, the HOA board eased a statement suspending her effective immediately. By night, she was sitting alone in a holding cell, and she finally understood. She hadn't been enforcing rules. She had been abusing people, and she chose the wrong child because that child had a father, and that father was the police chief. The truth doesn't explode all at once. It leaks. It seeps through cracks people didn't even know existed, filling every corner until there's nowhere left to stand without getting wet. Karen learned that the hard way. The morning after the arrest, the hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of a monitor and the soft rustle of nurses moving in and out. My daughter lay still beneath white sheets, her face bruised, her lips stitched, her nose wrapped carefully in gauze. She slept deeper than I had seen in weeks, exhaustion finally overtaking fear. I sat beside her bed, watching her chest rise and fall. Every breath felt like a victory. Outside that room, the machinery of truth was already grinding forward. By sunrise, Internal Affairs had opened a file. Not on me, like Karen had threatened, but on her. Every complaint ever filed against her as an HOA representative was pulled. Every email, every warning that had been quietly buried by boards more interested in avoiding conflict than protecting people. And there were many, too many. At the same time, detectives began formal interviews. Not rushed statements scribbled on notepads, but recorded, sworn testimony. Neighbors who had stayed quiet for years suddenly found their voices. One by one they spoke. About the way Karen screamed at elderly residents for sitting too long on benches. About the time she threatened to tow a single mother's car while the woman was at work. About children reduced to tears over chalk drawings, bicycles, laughter. And now, finally, about the punch. Mrs. Alvarez cried as she described it. She didn't hesitate, she said into the microphone. She didn't warn her. She just hit her, like it was nothing. Another neighbor described the sound. A young man from across the street admitted he had filmed part of it. Not the punch itself, but the moments right after. Karen standing there, smiling. My daughter bleeding. The video spread quickly. Karen's lawyer tried to stop it. He failed. By mid-morning, reporters were camped outside the courthouse. By noon, Karen's name was no longer just local. It had escaped the neighborhood and taken on a life of its own. HOA official arrested for assaulting disabled child. Community enforcer charged with felony assault on minor. Every headline cut deeper. Inside a small interview room at the station, Karen sat hunched over a metal table, hands trembling. The fire was gone from her eyes. The superiority, the certainty. Now there was only confusion and fear. She had stopped asking to speak to the HOA board. She had started asking for her mother. Her attorney sat beside her, flipping through papers with increasing frustration. Each time he thought he had a defense, another witness statement arrived. Another video, another documented complaint. "This is bad," he muttered under his breath. Karen looked up sharply. "You said this would go away." He didn't respond. Because it wouldn't. The detective across from her slid a folder forward. "Multiple eyewitnesses," he said calmly. "Medical reports, video evidence, prior complaints establishing a pattern of behavior." Karen shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "She disrespected me," she whispered. "She needed to learn." The detective's voice hardened. "She's 13. And she was sitting in a wheelchair." Karen opened her mouth, closed it. There was nothing left to say. Later that afternoon, I walked into the courthouse with my daughter's mother by my side. Our Dot. R was still at the hospital, resting, surrounded by nurses who treated her like fragile glass. The courtroom felt colder than it should have. Karen sat at the defense table in a plain jumpsuit, her hair unwashed, her posture collapsed. She didn't look like the woman who had stormed up our driveway. She looked small. The judge entered, the room stood, and the truth finally stood too. The prosecutor laid it out slowly, carefully, with no emotion at all. Facts, evidence, timelines, photos. My daughter's medical images appeared on a screen. The bruising, the swelling, the broken nose. Karen's lawyer tried to object. The judge overruled. Witness after witness took the stand. They didn't shout. They didn't exaggerate. They simply told the truth. Karen watched as her own words were played back from old recordings. Threats, insults, dehumanizing language she had used so casually, so often she had forgotten it mattered. The prosecutor turned toward her. "This was not enforcement," he said. "This was cruelty." Karen's shoulders shook. When the judge asked if she wished to speak, her lawyer whispered urgently. Karen stood anyway. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said, her voice barely audible. "I just wanted respect." The judge looked at her for a long moment. "Respect," he said slowly, "is not demanded with fists." The gavel struck. Charges were confirmed. Felony assault on a minor. Aggravating circumstances. Restraining order granted immediately. Karen was remanded into custody. As deputies led her away, she glanced once toward the gallery, toward me. For the first time, there was no anger in her eyes, only understanding. She finally knew what she had done. Back at the hospital that night, my daughter woke briefly. She looked at me with tired eyes. "Is she gone?" she asked softly. "Yes," I said. "She can't hurt you anymore." She nodded, relief washing over her face, and drifted back to sleep. The truth had come out, and it wasn't finished yet. Justice doesn't always arrive quietly. Sometimes it comes back to the exact place where everything went wrong. For Karen, that place was our driveway. The day of sentencing was gray and heavy, clouds hanging low over the neighborhood like the sky itself was waiting. News vans lined the street, their antennas raised, cameras pointed toward the same concrete strip Karen had marched up with such confidence only weeks earlier. The same driveway where she thought she had power. The same driveway where she lost everything. I stood at the front window, watching as officers set up barriers. My daughter sat behind me in her wheelchair, a blanket over her legs, her face still healing but her eyes sharper now. Stronger. "You have to watch," I said gently. She shook her head. "I want to," she replied. The court had approved her request. Karen's sentencing would include a supervised transfer from the courthouse to the patrol unit parked in front of the house, the same house she had violated. The judge had called it symbolic closure. I called it accountability. The sound of engines approached. First one patrol car, then another, then a van carrying press. Neighbors stepped out onto their lawns, some standing silently, others whispering. People who had been afraid of Karen for years now watched without fear. The lead car stopped. Karen stepped out. She wore a plain outfit issued by the county. No clipboard, no badge, no sharp tone. Her hair was pulled back, her hands cuffed in front of her. She looked around slowly. She recognized everything. The mailbox she once complained about. The porch where my daughter had bled. The driveway she once stormed like a conqueror. Her face crumpled. The judge's voice echoed in my mind as I remembered. the words spoken just an hour earlier. Felony assault on a minor. 18 months incarceration. Mandatory anger management. Permanent ban from HOA leadership. No contact order with the victim. Each sentence had landed like a hammer. Now the weight of it pressed down on her all at once. The officers guided her forward. Karen hesitated. She looked up at the porch, at my daughter, at the wheelchair, at the cast that was still there, still a reminder. For a moment, just one, it looked like she might say something, an apology, a regret. Instead, her mouth trembled and nothing came out. She was led down the driveway. Cameras clicked, microphones buzzed. Someone shouted a question. "Do you regret what you did?" Karen flinched but didn't answer. Another voice called out, "Was it worth it?" She stopped walking. The officer paused, watching her carefully. Karen turned her head slightly, her eyes scanning the faces around her, neighbors, reporters, police. Finally, she spoke. "I didn't think anyone would stop me," she said quietly. The words hit harder than any excuse. Not "I didn't mean to," not "I was wrong," just the truth. She didn't think anyone would stop her. My daughter squeezed my hand. "I'm glad you did," she whispered. I nodded. "So am I." Karen was placed into the back of the patrol car. The door closed, the engine started, and just like that, she was gone. The street felt different immediately. Lighter. As the vehicles pulled away, neighbors began to approach. Slowly at first, unsure, then with confidence. Mrs. Alvarez hugged my daughter gently. "We should have spoken up sooner," she said through tears. Others followed. Apologies, support, quiet shame mixed with relief. Later that afternoon, the HOA board president arrived. He didn't bring papers. He brought resignation letters. Karen's name had already been stripped from every role. Policies were rewritten. Oversight added. Safeguards created. All too late for what happened, but enough to stop it from happening again. That evening, as the sun dipped low, my daughter asked to sit on the porch again. The same porch, the same spot. I wheeled her out carefully, adjusting her leg, making sure she was comfortable. She looked around, breathing deeply. "It feels different," she said. "Because it is," I replied. She leaned her head against my arm. "She thought I was weak," she said quietly. I shook my head. "No," I said. The porch light flicked on as night settled in, and for the first time since the accident, since the punch, since the fear, peace returned to the driveway. Justice had come home. The house didn't feel the same after everything ended. It wasn't broken, it wasn't damaged, but it was changed. In the days after Karen was sentenced, silence settled over our home in a way I had never experienced before. Not the heavy silence of fear or tension, but a cautious, unfamiliar calm, like a place that had survived a storm and was still checking the sky. My daughter came home from the hospital on a quiet afternoon. The ambulance didn't use sirens this time. She didn't need them. Her face was still bruised, yellow and purple, fading slowly back into skin. Her lip had stitches that pulled when she smiled, so she didn't smile much yet. Her nose was still tender, and her leg, the cast, remained a constant reminder of everything she had been through even before that day on the porch. But she was alive, she was safe, and she was still my daughter. We brought her inside carefully, setting her wheelchair in the living room, adjusting, pillows, blankets, anything to make her comfortable. She watched us with quiet eyes, taking everything in like she was relearning a place she had known her whole life. That night, she slept in her own bed for the first time since the incident. I didn't. I sat in a chair beside her, listening to he breathe. Every inhale was steady, every exhale proof. In the weeks that followed, life didn't snap back to normal. It moved slowly, intentionally. She had nightmares at first. Sometimes she would wake up crying, calling my name, her hands shaking as if she could still feel the punch, still hear Karen's voice. I would sit on the edge of her bed and hold her until the shaking stopped, until her breathing slowed. "She can't hurt you anymore," I would whisper. And slowly, she began to believe it. The neighborhood changed too. People waved now, not nervously, not politely, but genuinely. Neighbors stopped by with meals, cards, small gifts. Some brought apologies they had held onto for years. "We should have said something sooner." That sentence came up again and again. I never blamed them. Fear is quiet, power is loud. Karen had counted on that. The HOA board dissolved temporarily. An independent mediator was brought in, rules were rewritten, authority was limited, transparency enforced, but none of that mattered to my daughter. What mattered was the porch. One afternoon, weeks later, she asked if we could go back out there. I hesitated. "Only if you're ready," I said. She nodded. "I am." I wheeled her out slowly, stopping for a moment at the doorway. The sunlight spilled across the porch just like it had before. Same boards, same railing, same view of the street. Different feeling. I positioned her chair where she liked it best. She sat quietly, hands resting in her lap, eyes closed for a moment. Then she took a deep breath. "I'm not scared anymore," she said softly. That was when I knew, not that she was healed, but that she was healing. Karen never contacted us again. She wasn't allowed to, but I heard things. Incarceration stripped her of the armor she had worn for years. Without her position, without her authority, without people backing away from her, she was juice. Another inmate. Another person forced to face who they really were. Anger management, therapy, court-mandated reflection. I don't know if she changed, but I know she stopped hurting people. That mattered more. Months passed, the cast came off, the stitches dissolved. My daughter stood on her own 2 feet again for the first time in a long time. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fast. But it was hers. The first thing she did was walk to the porch. She stood there, holding the railing, looking out at the street. Then she smiled. A real one. "I won," she said. I shook my head gently. "No," I said. "You survived." She thought about that, then nodded. "That's better." Life didn't become perfect after that, but it became honest and quiet and safe. And every time the sun sets over that porch now, I remember something important. Power is loud until it's challenged. Cruelty feels strong until it's exposed, and justice doesn't always come fast. But when it does, it stays.